Celes is the next big tank in War of the Visions. Her runic ability is going to open the door to increased flexibility so that she isn't just stuck being a magic tank. She has a killer AoE for farming and plenty of utility for various types of content. So let's get into the video and break down just what makes her so special. We're going to start off by talking about the pros and cons for Celes, but I'm also going to put some chapters down in the video bar so that you can navigate around the video and find the content that you are looking for. To start off a review about Celes, we have to talk about Runic because this is the biggest hallmark of her entire kit. Basically, you use Runic, you get Protect and Shell, and you can nullify 2 reflectable magic attacks. Now, if these are AoEs, it cancels the whole attack. Your party members will be spared. So because she's able to negate a lot of different types of magic, and we're going to talk about that. We'll talk about exactly what is covered by Runic and what is not covered by Runic. She can be built for defense rather than being built purely for magic damage with spirit and magic resistance and all those other things, because her Runic's going to cancel most of that magic damage, and then when the attack scaling abilities come through, she can be built for defense accessories, defense armor, non-magic resistances, whatever it is, whatever you're seeing in the meta. So she has that Protect and Shell. Those are incredibly powerful effects. We don't have a lot of consistent ways to remove those, so you can see just from Charlotte as a tank how effective that can be. She also has innate and active hate, and that's very important for her because she has a ton of good TP skills and there's lots of things you want her to use, but she does have a very strong active TP hate skill that gives 25 single target resistance, but the fact that she can have it on her sub skills, on her passive skills, is also just really key for tanks. She can also debuff AoE resist. That's a big AoE that she gets. She can debuff spirit, she can inflict sleep, so there's lots of ways for her to synergize with your team or affect the opposing team as they try to take her down. She also has many different methods of building her defenses, so it's harder to bring them down. You can't penetrate through all these different types of things or break them all, so that protects her more. So for example, she can raise all of her attack type resistances, her single target resistances. She has Protect and Shell, and then again, we're going to build her in defense and spirit, so there's so many different ways that she can build up her shields that it's very difficult to deal damage to her. She also has a counter skill that is an all damage reduction, and that is a very powerful skill as well. Again, when we're hopefully going to be seeing a different meta here with physical and magic attackers. Right now we see primarily magic attackers and some teams that are primarily physical. We'll see more mixes, and this is going to be a really good skill for that. She still does have the magic guard on the Spellblade sub, so if you do see some magic based light teams still, then you'll be able to specifically tech against those. Now, just like Locke, Celes doesn't have any major cons or demerits, but there are a few things that we can talk about in this section. So starting with AP is overall a huge advantage, and it's not a con. However, I do want to mention that it sometimes can reduce your TP skill usage on a short map. So it's something with a tank, you really need them to get their 2 buffs usually, their 2 important buffs to help them survive, because at the end of the day, their job is not to attack people, it is to tank damage. The rest of your team is going to be dealing the damage. So she needs to get her single target resist up. That's going to be very important, specifically against Elena. That's going to be very important, and she needs to get her runic skill up in most situations. So if you have a very short map, she has some pretty good range on a lot of skills that she could actually hit someone on turn 2, and you'll have to work around with that and maybe test out your AI. Maybe you have to turn off her big AoE, although you want that because it reduces AoE resistance as well. Now, she also doesn't have any team buffs on her main kit, which for a tank isn't a big deal, and you can give her a TMR to give her a team buff, but I do like to mention that because that's something that you have to build for in PvE situations where you can't just turn off and on a skill in order to manipulate AI. It does mean that you have to use certain sub jobs, or maybe you have to use a TMR to fix that. And now this last one, this is actually probably the biggest con. The other two are really like, I'm stretching it, but this is probably the biggest con, which is that she only has Cloth and Hat as her armor. And that's going to offer less tanky options. So no Knight's Armor, no Brigandine, but she is going to have the survival vest for that single target resist. She's still going to have things like the Smart Coat is really good. You lose 2% magic resist, but you gain some spirit on it. So, I mean, tomato, right? This is not a huge demerit. Again, it's just probably the more significant of the three that I've listed. Next up, we're going to talk about Runic, and there's no way that I can list literally everything, every unit, every spell that's going to be affected by this, but I will mention that basically most magic attacks, not magic scaling attacks, but most magic attacks are going to be reflectable, like almost everything. And that's going to affect a lot of current units like More the Merrier, Helena, Halloween Little Leela, Golbez, any Black Mage, calculators, things like that. They're all going to be affected by Runic. Now, there are some exceptions, some things that don't get reflected by Runic, and that would be Limit Bursts is the big one. So, Golbez, More the Merrier, Halloween Little Leela, Helena, they're all going to have powerful limit bursts that can still hit Celes, but they're hitting a magic tank and they're magic-based units, so it's not the best situation to be in. If you're in guild battle and you have to go multiple rounds against a Celes team, then you're only going to have that one limit burst, so that's not really the most consistent way to deal with her. Now, Black Mages all have the skill Drain, and Golbez and Helena also have Drain. Drain does not get reflected, so you can use that instead. If you have a Scholar that has Law of Geo-Absorption, that will also not be reflected, and it's a strike attack, so that would actually be a pretty good way of attacking Celes. And then all of our magic scaling jobs that are not actually magic attackers, they don't have a lot of reflectable skills. So, for example, Azure Pathfinder for Elena, Blade Souls, Rune Knights are all very effective. Drain Evocation weirdly does not reflect, so that's going to be really good for a sub Rune Knight to drain Evocate on Celes on the way in, and then follow up with whatever, a Stone Gutblade, Arrow Gutblade, whatever you have, Banish Gutblade. That would be pretty effective, or maybe Hazard spell, or not Hazard spell, Hazard slash, whatever you have, whoever you're using, they'll be able to use those skills against her. Now, we also have Ibarra, who has Iza Yoi, and that's also going to be effective against Celes because it's a huge potency skill if Celes has an attacker magic debuff on, but it's also lightning from a lightning unit, so while Celes is a magic tank, this should still be a pretty effective skill on her. One more important note, that any magic scaling missile attack are also reflectable, so Garvel, More the Merrier, and Jaden are all affected by that as well. So really you're only safe unless you have a magic slashing job, and otherwise you're pretty much reflectable aside from limit bursts and drain. I've decided to compare Celes to Charlotte and Rain, who are both pretty capable magic tanks, and Celes looks really good compared to them, and it's not just because of Runic. She basically takes the best parts of Charlotte and Rain and puts them together. So she has Rain's high HP, but Charlotte's high agility. She's got the starting AP like Rain does, but has the move +1 that Charlotte has. So there's all these little pieces that are just so effective. The one area she drops off is that she does not have a high innate spirit like they do. She doesn't have one standout huge resistance maybe like Rain does, but her resistances are very well spread out. They're all very, very buildable, except for the strike resistance, which is not something that we see a lot of anyway, but it is something that you could target. Maybe you can target that with the Dark Pugilist, I forgot his name, or maybe when Queen comes from the Persona collaboration, she's a lightning striker, she'll get involved, but at the end of the day, the full kit, when you look at it, looks really good, especially in comparison to these two magic tanks. She does have low accuracy, you can see that on the chart there, and that's not a deal breaker for a tank, but it is something that you should pay attention to. Now, just because Celes is so good, it doesn't mean that Charlotte's usability is going to fall off a cliff. She's still going to be a very effective tank. She's going to be pretty good when we see a lot of water teams running around. So if you have her, don't worry, you don't have to get Celes, but Celes is definitely an upgrade in a lot of ways. Before we talk about my verdict, there's a few other things that I wanted to mention. So the first is going to be Ibarra, and I don't think that Ibarra is going to affect Celes's viability. I think that there aren't so many players that have her that Celes is going to be in trouble, and first and foremost, Celes is a magic tank that can stack high spirit, magic resistance, etc. So I don't think a bar is a big counter. I mean, I'd be more worried about Cloud coming in and just wrecking her with a Braver. There's always going to be counterplay in War of the Visions. It's one of the cool parts about it, so that's not something anybody should be worried about. It shouldn't be something that keeps you from pulling for her. I also think that Celes's single target resist is going to line up really well against Elena. Elena only has a few AoEs that she uses on her sub kit. There's one, and then her limit burst, and then otherwise she has a lot of single target attacks. So that chaining's still going to be a problem, but I think this is a good situation that we have this tank coming up for this light meta. Now, for Celes to have this 210 times cure, it's curata on her sub job, is also pretty cool, because that's going to be an effective way to heal yourself or other people in Fight 2 of Guild's Battle. Just make sure that she has a chance to get her runic active, because that's more important than the heal is, but if you can get the best of both worlds, then why not? And with that said, it's time for the verdict. So if you're wondering whether or not you should be pulling for Celes, the answer is yes, you should be pulling for her. She's an amazing magic tank. She's going to make your account better. The exception would be if you're feeling really good about Charlotte and Celes is going to get in the way of your plans of pulling other units, because at the end of the day, if you want a different unit, then that's the unit that you should be pulling for. However, I do think that Celes has more application in future content because of Runic, and if you use Rain as your magic tank, it's time to upgrade. That is something that I stuck to for a very long time. Until recently, I was using Rain as my magic tank, and he is still a very strong unit, but he's just not fit for the current meta, and when water comes in a big way soon, he's really going to take a nosedive. So I think that you have to go to either Charlotte or Celes as your main magic tank on your account, whichever one you can get, and it is very helpful to have a magic tank. Now, for myself, I'm going to stick with Charlotte. I EX'd her about a week ago, so I'm brand new to using her. I've already, it's been a huge conversion. Even just using her against Elena makes such a big difference. It gives you some perspective that, you know, when I made that Elena video, some people were like, just use Charlotte. But you know what? If you don't have Charlotte, you're in a very, very different and more difficult place of the game. So now that I have her, yeah, dealing with Elena is a lot more easy to do than it was when I was using Rain and King Mont as my tanks. But if you can get either one of the Charlotte or Celes, you're going to be set for magic tank. That's basically what it comes down to. Charlotte still does have some pluses. The fact that her counter just raises her spirit, that's going to help all subsequent damage, where Celes needs to have a counter proc every time to reduce damage. Like, there's little things like that Charlotte does really well. Her protection against debuffs is really strong as well. So there's tons of good things about Charlotte still. She's still a very good tank. You can use either of them. Don't get set on having to use Celes. But if you don't have Charlotte, I think that Celes is going to be a very worthy addition for your account. All right, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to support the channel, be sure to subscribe and comment on the video. Let me know what you think about Celes, if you plan on going for her, and then while you're down there, give the video a like too. Otherwise, we'll see you all in the next video, and that will probably be a Terra pull video. So if I can stream it, I will. If not, I'll just do a pull video. It's going to be after a little vacation that I'm on right now. So when you see this video, I'm already going to be on my vacation, and I'll be coming back on Wednesday or Thursday. So see you all when I get back.